Okay, I call the Planning Commission of August 28th to order. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next we have roll call.
Yes. Commissioner Benjamin?
Here.
Commissioner Evans?
Here.
And currently acting Commissioner Chair for tonight, Mr. DeMond. Thank you.
Is that a new title we have? I like that.
And we'll note for the record that Chair Hernandez and Vice Chair Holt are absent tonight.
Okay. All right. Next item of agenda is the approval of the minutes dated August 14th, 2018. We have any changes, corrections, additions?
On item 1A, coastal development permit, it's not listed in the minutes that I was recused from that item. And also the motion carried 4-0 instead of 5-0. Typos.
I move to approve the minutes of the August 14th meeting with the changes noted by Commissioner Evans.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So the next item is public comment, and this is for any item that's not on the agenda. So if you'd like to speak on some general topic that's not on the agenda tonight, please fill out a green card, not that colorblind, green card, and feel free to go up to the mic. Seeing none, I will close public comment. And then we have 3 public hearing items. And the first one is a sign program, architectural review and sign permit for 1410 and 1430 Cabrillo Highway for Cameron's Pub and Inn, Half Moon Bay RV Park, and Best Western Hotel.
Thank you, Acting Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This item comes to you in preparation of the completion of the Best Western Hotel on the south side of town along corner of Wavecrest Road and Cabrillo Highway. And it involves a sign program, as mentioned, also a new wall sign for the new hotel, sign permit approval, and reconfiguration of the existing monument sign along the corner of Wavecrest Road and Cabrillo Highway, and sign approval for the existing signs at the Cameron's Pub, Inn, and Restaurant, as well as the existing signs for the RV park. The city approval for the new hotel that's just about completed included a condition of approval that required approval of the sign program and sign permits before the installation of the new signs. The purpose of the sign program is to provide flexibility within a multi-tenant site, which this is. This slide indicates the site in green and includes 2 parcels and 3 tenants, the RV park here, the new hotel, and then the existing restaurant, pub, and inn, Cameron's Inn. This slide shows the existing monument sign on the corner, as well as the proposed. And notice that we have all 3 tenants refurbished new signs within the monument sign, as well as indirect gooseneck lighting along the top. This slide shows is a sample of many of the signs that are out there currently for Cameron's Inn and Pub. And the signs consist of numerous small signs installed along the north and east elevations, and the vast majority of which are, more decorative pub-themed signs, and a lot of them are accessory to the larger business signs. And in many of these many of the signs function as a more architectural element as opposed to actual business sign, and at times are integral to the business model that you see at Cameron's Pub currently. This slide indicates the new wall sign that's will be included in the sign program and the sign permits for the Best Western. This is their only sign, and then they also have the monument sign out front. It also includes the same gooseneck lighting, indirect lighting along the top. And then this slide indicates the existing RV park signs. There are two, sign 20 and 21. The banner indicated as 22 will be removed prior to the issuance of the building permit for the new signs. The sign along Wavecrest Road also includes indirect gooseneck lighting. With that, staff is supportive of the sign program and sign permit and architectural review. An additional condition was added allowing for a little bit of flexibility with the Cameron's Inn, pub, and restaurant for the accessory signs of 10%, to allow for future flexibility integrated into the sign program. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And then also the representative from the Best Western is here, as well as the owner. So.
Scott, thank you. Are there any questions for Scott?
I remember when the hotel came through to us, at that time, and my memory may be bad and I didn't look it up, I recall that the trash enclosure was going to be at the corner of where this sign is, and maybe that's been moved now?
So I'm just flipping back to the, the aerial photograph here. The trash enclosure is actually completed, and it is in the location that was approved by the Planning Commission back in 2015 when the additional 10 rooms were added to the project. And it is roughly, we use a laser pointer here, it's roughly right behind the monument sign. So.
And so I don't, on the graphics, that doesn't show how that's going to look together.
Yeah, so the trash enclosure has actually been completed, and it is approximately where you see the lawn furniture in this photograph.
Right, so there's no graphics that show how this looks with that trash enclosure?
No, not currently, so. As a follow-up, though, we could request that updated photographs are added to the sign program, if that's something that the Planning Commission feels is appropriate. So.
I have some questions, if I might. Thank you. So, so thank you for the report. I want to be sure I understand the lighting both, the signs both from perspective of daytime and from the nighttime. Could you please walk me through where the lighting is on the structures with respect to signage and other lights that would be visible from, Wavecrest or from Highway 1 in particular?
Yes, certainly. So as far as the monument sign, there would be 4 new gooseneck indirect lights along the top of the sign out front, and then for the new hotel, there would also be 2 new gooseneck lights here.
So I'm clear on the new lighting. What about the existing lighting? How is that changing?
No changes to the existing lighting for the Cameron's Inn and pub, and then also the RV park does have 1 gooseneck light for the sign.
Would you mind going over for me just the locations of the existing lighting, please?
Let's see. To my knowledge, it's all spillover lights for the Cameron's Inn and pub. I may want to refer to the property owner to provide a little more information on the inn and pub.
And I'm going to jump in. You and I went through 25 signs, and so I remember a couple of them. There's a couple exposed neon signs on that facade there, the Camerons, and there's an ice cream cone up in the top center section. There's a sign that is not showing in the pictures that were presented to you in this presentation, but it's in the packet. It's a very small sign on the north-facing facade. It's the only internally illuminated light box sign, and it's up kind of high. And then there's, of course, the building lighting, which you can see some of the lights in this picture, including some exposed neon tubing on gable ends. There's 2 gable ends that includes that tubing facing Wavecrest, and then one facing Cabrillo Highway. And I believe that's it.
Was there a review of the consistency of the existing lighting plus the new lighting in terms of the illumination of the structures, whether we're getting net increases or they're about the same?
The net increase in illumination would be marginal due to the type of fixture that's been selected for the new signs. And I actually have this is included in the sign program, a little more detail on the actual fixture itself. So
I see. Okay, well, that's a good answer for now. I'd like to hear from the public and the applicant if they wish. Thank you.
Any more questions for Scott before we, so we now open up the floor for public comment. We usually give the applicant first opportunity to talk. If the applicant would like to talk about the signs, they're welcome to. Right now, I don't have any green cards for this item, so if you'd like to talk about the sign program, let me know.
Is there a button? There we go. Hi, my name is Kevin Palmer. My brother couldn't be here, he apologized, so I'm here to kind of answer any other questions. With regard to the actual building itself, there's been no real additional changes to any lighting structures on the actual building itself. Going out the doors is required to have some lights that are on the parking lot sides. Whenever you go out a door, you're supposed to have a couple lights. Those are pre-existing. Short of the new parking lot lights that are out there, which are a lot more brighter than what was already there, okay? Just the only additional lights would be the new sign that's there and also what's going on in the hotel. That's about the only additional lighting that's been happening there. So.
You want to ask the applicant any questions?
Maybe later, I don't know, I'm still debating that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Call me back if you need me.
All right. It's your last opportunity if you want to talk about signs. Otherwise, we'll bring it back to the commissioners for deliberation.
So I'm generally okay with this. I mean, I appreciate the architectural sign, as art model that distinguishes from sign as information. It sort of takes on an artistic item, which I appreciate. The one concern I do have about this and hopefully the opportunity to do something about it are those exposed neon tube lighting that I see at the gable ends. It does strike me that those are, I think their value from a security standpoint is pretty marginal, and I think they're distracting from public points of view. And given all the other changes, this seems like a great opportunity to find another approach. And I'm very, I'm flexible in terms of what the safety objective is. I'm certainly interested in staff's perspective and, of course, you, my colleagues, how you see those. So let me start with that. And I appreciate John's concern for knowing more about the enclosure, and I'm interested in his thoughts about how that should work.
So it's beyond the scope of work. This is an application for a sign on the property. And so talking about site lighting and construction lighting is, I don't think, in the scope of this. And I think it's not our place to start suggesting, not that there couldn't be improvement to the lighting on the building, but that's not part of this. As I see this is the sign application. And so it also, our sign ordinance was put together before my tenure on this commission, and it's really lacking. I mean, there's parts of the sign ordinance that are good, and they're intended for like shopping centers and multi-tenant things, and also some areas where new projects that have inappropriate signs kind of for the character of the town is, but there's nothing in that ordinance that deals with our heritage buildings and businesses where marketing for the business and signs are kind of blended together like a mural on a building, and our ordinance doesn't have any way to deal with that at all. So that's leading us, at least me, down the path of saying that there's good reason for exceptions. Now this, even though it's an old building, the Cameron's Pub has nothing to do with the heritage of the building. That's a relatively newer use. But all that being said, there's, and with the monument sign out front, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I mean, it's fine, and it's could have been tied in more with the trash enclosure that's there. That's not that important, and it fits the regulation, and it does its job for people driving up down Highway 1.
So Jill or Scott, do you have any comments on the lighting, or would you like to take that up on a separate issue, future? What's the process involved in that?
Sure. Well, we can note that the neon tubing lighting is actually addressed in the city's code, and it describes how it can be used to highlight some things, but it's not supposed to be banded around an entire facade, that kind of thing. We don't know when it was put in, and so I think that was the question that Commissioners Evans and Benjamin were thinking about. So it's definitely something that's within the purview of a sign program, is to look at those kinds of elements that function in that way. The building lighting, there's lights over each entrance that are, I think you can see. Scott, can you flip this? You can see the one on the lower right, and I think there's one on the other side, and they're in your packet. So I hope that helps.
So as far as lighting, where do you,
So
Matt?
if I understood staff's position, it sounds like we could ask for the neon tube lighting to be more in conformance with our stuff as part of the sign program. So, you know, I'm inclined to do that. I'm certainly interested in what the chair thinks before making a motion.
okay, my issue on this is, our focus is on signs, but obviously every time we hear any kind of a motion, other factors with respect to the site tend to creep in. Lighting, I think, certainly is an important issue, and I mean, the issue that I haven't heard, I'm not sure if it's appropriate at this time, is whether or not what the commission approved for lighting as well as the city code, have been followed on the site. And since I don't have an answer to that, I think that's something that, you know, perhaps the planning department and enforcement can look at and perhaps report back to us whether this is an issue. Since I haven't seen it, you know, I don't have an opinion one way or the other on that, but I think it's important to ensure that, you know, the plan was followed and that city code is being followed. So I think that's one option that we can follow.
Yeah, I mean, in this case where, I think as John said, this is one of those situations where it's good to consider making an exception. And I appreciated the reasoning that was in staff's report and in John's points. In making an exception, it seems like we have an opportunity to make it conform better. So even if, and I don't know when that lighting was put in, perhaps the applicant knows, but to the extent that we're accommodating the additional signs, it seems like an opportunity to say, we're bending the rules a little for you here. It would be nice if, you know, those elements of lighting that are so extensive that go around this gable, it would be nice if we could get those covered. Do you follow my thinking about this?
So I'm trying to figure out what do you suggest we change as part of this approval?
Right, so let me frame that as a question to staff. If a project for neon lighting were to go in today, given the code that's enforced today, how would the neon lighting differ from what is present in the gables right now at the gable end?
I can't speculate because I wouldn't know what they would be proposing. But I think what Heather, your assistant city attorney, and I are discussing is that if those had a permit, then they can be acknowledged and retained in your sign program. If they were put in without a permit and you are choosing to not support them or acknowledge them, then they would need to be removed immediately as not having status.
I see. So maybe this is a question of code compliance.
So we can do that permit history. We didn't find anything, but we can look again.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know how the applicant feels about it. Maybe it's not a big deal, and I don't want to create more drama around these lights than there needs to be. But, you know, code matters and code compliance matters. So, you know, given where staff is headed with respect to code compliance, I'm happy to support John's position on this, which is to say, you know, let the code compliance, if I can put words in your mouth, John, let the code compliance be verified and if necessary cured if there's a problem.
Relative to the sign application.
Relative to the lighting.
Well, I'm uncomfortable holding a project hostage for the lighting. The lighting's not great on the doors and the entrances, and it's kind of glare, and it could be really improved, but I don't think it's fair. This is not the right format.
Yeah, well,
We do need another mechanism. There's quite a few buildings in town that retroactively we could really improve the lighting on that. I don't think this is the forum. to
yeah,
do that.
well, I think we're in violent agreement here. I'm suggesting that I would support the proposal. Independently of the proposal, I'm suggesting that as a compliance matter, something that doesn't actually require planning commission approval, we get verification that the lighting was permitted. And if it's not, we can expect staff to fix it because that's how codes work.
So do I have a recommended motion?
Yeah, I move the resolution next in order.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Can we have a roll call vote in case we need it?
Yes. Commissioner Benjamin?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
And Chair
Yes.
Vaughn. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Chair, I need to make an announcement. Thank you for your patience. We just wanted to let you know that the printing issue that we had with the agenda, we've reprinted the agendas. There's a stack in the back, and if somebody could pass them around, that would be fantastic. Hey, Scott, can you pass those agendas around? Thanks. And we apologize for that.
Coastal development permit to allow a lot merger of two adjacent parcels, APN 056-071-230 and 240, and a lot line adjustment between four parcels, APN 056-071, 190, 210, 220, and the new single merged lot 329 and 331 Kelly Avenue.
If you guys don't mind just waiting a moment, we're having a little technical difficulty.
I apologize. Please bear with us. And Ms. Garrison, perhaps you can kind of walk us through it, and maybe once the media gets done, we can then point to pictures. So kind of give us an idea of what's going on, why it's going on.
That's fine. It's a fairly brief presentation. I'm not sure if this is critical. For the record, I'm Doug Garrison, the project planner. The items here are a coastal development permit, a lot merger, and a lot line adjustment. Okay. And there's a little bit of background on this I'll get into in a moment, but the location, it's actually 5 lots, north side of Kelly Avenue. There are 5 fairly narrow lots that run all the way up to Pilarcitos Creek to the north. The property, a little bit unusual. Those lots have split zoning. There's about a 150-foot wide swath of land that fronts onto Kelly Avenue that's actually designated as residential in both our land use plan and our zoning code. And then the remainder of the lots, the bulk of the area, is actually urban reserve. And so how this got here, this area, it's known, I guess, as Andriotti Family Farm. They've been there since the 1920s. And in one sense, this is really an estate planning exercise. This 5 lots came up on the market in 2016. The Peninsula Open Space Trust purchased the property, and they've been working with the Andriottis since then towards a shared goal, which is to preserve the farming operations there. All of that is sort of between Post and Andriotti's. And So what they've worked out is essentially a reconfiguration of the lots that works for the estate planning purposes, and then it also creates a large lot that will, Post will then put a permanent agricultural conservation easement on that and record that, so that helps to maintain the farming. And again, those are not matters that the city has been involved in, or like any other real estate transaction doesn't really need to. Where we get involved is reconfiguring the lots so that it works for them. And for sort of a technicality, there are two steps in this. One is a lot merger, to merge two lots together. So it goes from 5 lots to 4. Then with the remaining 4 lots, we'll reconfigure some of those lot lines, still be 4 lots when they're done. So cumulatively, there's 1 less lot, same area, no change in use, no intensification of use, no construction, no demolition. Mergers and lot line adjustments are typically ministerial projects. We review them to make sure that the surveyor got the property description correct, that they meet the minimum standards for lot size in our zoning code. It's more of a technical exercise. Here in the coastal zone, there's a little twist that a lot line adjustment requires a coastal development permit. So we do also review these for compliance with our land use plan, the Coastal Act. So this is the first step, the area outlined in yellow. Those are the 2 parcels that will be merged into 1 lot. And that includes, if you look at the bottom of the picture on Kelly Avenue, that's where the barns and most of the sheds and the buildings that go with the farming are. So that maintains all of the farm-related activities in one area. Then, this is a little bit hard to read, but it's in your staff report. With the lot line adjustment, we get, again, this is the 2 lots that were merged, includes the barns and that, and now it includes all of this. So that's a 21.5 acre lot, essentially. Previously, none of these lots were over more than 4.5 acres, essentially. And so, if you look where these lots fronting onto Kelly are now, that coincides with the residential zoning and the residential land use plan map. So it brings it more into conformance with our existing requirements. But again, it maintains access to Kelly for the farming operations, keeps it all consolidated in one location. So when we reviewed this, we're always interested, is there a change in use? Is it going to create a lot of traffic? In this case, no, nothing changes. The exact same uses that are there last week will be there next week. Does deal with some non-conforming issues. One of the lot lines that's going to disappear currently goes right through the middle of a couple of buildings. That line goes away, so that's better. In our urban reserve zoning, the minimum lot size is 50 acres. This resulting parcel of 21.45 acres is not 50, but it's certainly much better than 4.5 acres, which are the size lots we had before. Doesn't affect coastal resources, access to the coast, environmentally sensitive habitat areas. It is adjacent to Pilarcitos Creek, but again, there's no new activity in that area. So in conclusion, we found it complies with our land use plan, general plan, zoning ordinance, the state subdivision map act, as well as the Half Moon Bay subdivision ordinance, and we're recommending approval. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Stuckler? Is there an applicant here that would like to speak to this?
Didn't follow the directions. Is this thing still working? Yes, great, thank you. Okay, so pardon my hunching over. My name is Benjamin Wright. I'm the Farmland Program Manager for Peninsula Open Space Trust. POST is the acronym for that, is a nonprofit land trust that's been protecting open space farms and parkland in and around Silicon Valley since 1977. And through our farmland program, we're working to secure a future for farmlands in our vision of a network of protected lands throughout the peninsula. And in 2016, we launched our Farmland Futures Initiative, which is seeking to triple the number of farms and farmland acres that are protected for agricultural use in perpetuity. And I've been thrilled to work with Dino and Terry over this past year since the Post purchased the farm toward the goal that Doug mentioned here a minute ago of protecting this farmland acreage that's been in production since the 1920s and before. So I just want to thank the staff and the commission and everyone who's come tonight. We're really thrilled to protect this farm. And yeah, stay tuned. We'll announce more publicly as it proceeds. Thank you. And I can take questions if you have them as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else from the public want to speak on this? Al. All of them I see are 1C, so let me go look. However, obviously, if you're interested in speaking, please do so.
Good evening, Chair DeMond, commissioners and staff. I'm just here to express appreciation to Post for what they've done here in particular to help our farm community remain viable. This was not a minor effort on their part, and I really appreciate the hard work and resources that they've put into this. And I have to also thank the Andriottis for all their hard work to stay in the farm business for all these years so that we can enjoy looking at the output and eating it. And I will close simply by saying, expressing my appreciation to staff for helping to find this creative method of protecting our local resources. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I will now close public comment and bring it back to the commission for comments, changes, approval, whatever.
So, you know, every so often I get friendly advice saying you should avoid making subjective comments about your applicants, and I'm gonna ignore that advice again tonight. I'm so grateful for Post's involvement in our coast-side over the 20-odd years that I've been here. And similarly, I feel so fortunate to have the Andriottis here and to know them as neighbors. Just to walk by and see a friendly face, it's just the way Half Moon Bay should be. So thank you both. I think this is a fantastic project, and I could not support it more enthusiastically.
Thanks for the presentation, Doug. It really was clear and simple. And I agree with Jimmy and the representative from Post. I'm sorry, I didn't remember your name. Ben, thank you. It's great. And our families go way back here. Some of them are classmates together. And it's great to see a collaborative effort between regulatory authorities and the farming community. And a great project.
I, too, have nothing negative to say, so since I don't have anything negative, obviously that means a positive, and therefore I will accept a recommendation.
I move the resolution next in order.
Second?
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
I guess roll call. Vote, please.
Commissioner Benjamin,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
and Commissioner DeMond.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I guess what we've all been waiting for. Next item is 1C. It's an overview of the Slosky-Gonzalez subdivision and applications to develop homes within the subdivision, initiation of a local coastal land use plan, amendments for establishment of a Slosky-Gonzalez planned development designation. And this is, I guess, continued from two weeks ago. So who's going to talk about this? Jill, you? Okay.
Thank you, Chair DeMond. So tonight, we're going to present an overview of the Stolosky-Gonzalez subdivision history, and we're going to explain how this background has led to our recommendation for an initiation of an amendment to our local coastal land use plan. Huh? Okay. So 2 weeks ago, while we're waiting a moment, 2 weeks ago we were looking at two homes, and I'll talk about that briefly. I want to be very clear that those homes are not on the agenda tonight. This is not a continuation of the meeting 2 weeks ago. This is a response to it, but this is a completely separate proposal, and it is different and apart from those two applications. All right, and these are what we're going to cover. And let's start with the background. So background-wise, in 2010, the city received an application for subdividing a parcel that was referred to as the Stolosky-Gonzalez parcel. And the application came in with a tentative parcel map and a planned unit development plan that had some development standards in it. The Planning Commission in late 2011 recommended approval of the proposal. There was CEQA review conducted as part of that. In early 2012, the City Council approved the subdivision, and that was subsequently appealed to the Coastal Commission, who deferred. I believe the applicant allowed for a longer time frame for the Coastal Commission to act on it, and then when it was considered, they found no substantive issues. So then that really brought it back to the city's approval, and so in 2015, the final parcel map was completed, and the entire subdivision and its associated plan unit development plan were approved, and we'll get into some more details about that in a second. Just for the setting of this, and we'll look at this slide again in a little bit, the Stolosky parcel is outlined in green. Thank you. The City of Naples subdivision is to the north of it. That's basically the south end of the Miramar neighborhood. The Surf Beach subdivision is south of the Stolosky-Gonzalez parcel. And then the Surf Beach, Dean Beach plan development designation pursuant to the local coastal land use plan is outlined in red. And that is really going to be the gist of our story tonight and what we're presenting. Is you can see the wedge shaped parcel, the green one that we've been talking about, and it's located inside of the red boundary. So also note the Stolosky-Gonzalez subdivision is represented there because you can see the 4 parcels and extensions of both Pullman Avenue and Champs-Élysées into cul-de-sacs, which was how that subdivision was approved. Okay, next slide. So here we are at 2 weeks ago. So we received an application from 2 different applications, 2 different property owners for 2 parcels in the Stolosky-Gonzalez subdivision, one in late 2017, the other in early 2018. And the applications were for coastal development permits and architectural review. And what is important about that is there are new discretionary reviews required for the homes. Their development that had not been previously approved the way that the subdivision had been approved. So they were readied over a period of time, and they became ready for your consideration, such that we were able to put them together on an agenda. We'd hoped that would be helpful. And at your hearing, we heard from the commission, and we'll get into the details of these, that applicable policies were of concern. Existing local coastal land use plan policies, and a concern about being able to make findings relative to those policies for the new discretionary permits that were being considered. The Planning Commission, you continued both of those items. You held a public hearing on both of them and closed the public hearings, and you continued them each to a date uncertain, and directed staff to return to you with history of the subdivision approval, which I just kind of knocked through in terms of the years and when things happened, some analysis, and our recommendation of how to deal with that. Your written staff report goes into quite a lot of detail. I'm trying to cover it at a high level. We see a lot of people here to speak tonight, so we're trying to accommodate that as well. But the next slide, we're going to note really what you were bringing up, what we were hearing in the meeting 2 weeks ago. So the key concern was for each house, you have to make conclusions that the homes conform to the local coastal program. And in Half Moon Bay, the local coastal program includes both your zoning code and the local coastal land use plan, which is the set of policies that we'll mostly be referring to here. So in this case, the actual narrative and explanation of the Surf Beach, Dunes Beach planned development area describes its boundaries, and you just saw those in that previous map. But noting that that narrative is actually considered to hold the weight of policy in the local coastal land use plan, and the narrative includes that parcel that was subdivided. Going on in the Surf Beach, Dunes Beach plan development description in your land use plan is policy 9.3.3A, which is really probably the most critical one here, is that it's noting that a specific plan shall be prepared for the entire area, which incorporates all of the conditions listed below, and there's several that follow. But by the entire area, that policy is specifically referring to the entire area that was bounded in red. And we're remembering where that is now. So let us continue. In this calling out of policies, we're kind of going here from the specific to the general. I just apologize for that, but honing in on Surf Beach, Dunes Beach first, we think that sets context. But now we're going to zoom a little bit out, get a little more general here about specific planned development policies. These are policies in the land use plan that are applicable to all of the planned developments that are designated in your plan, and you have quite a few. And there's 3 policies in particular that are relevant to your discussion, and where we agreed, staff agrees with your concerns about being able to make the findings. Policy 9.8 is very similar to what you just saw for the Surf Beach, Dune Beach PD, that the entire site shall be planned as a unit. And policy 9.11, talking about how each and every parcel needs to be acknowledged and its build out. And then policy, next slide, 9.14 is talking about how to deal with separate ownerships and things like that, but it's still requiring the complete coverage through a specific plan. So why does this matter? So really the basics are that the Stolowski-Gonzalez subdivision it's located in the Surf Beach Dunes Beach Plan Development District, but a specific plan was not prepared for the entire area. A planned unit development plan was prepared for the Stolowski-Gonzalez subdivision, but that didn't cover the entire area either. And we do want to note that there are some planned developments in the code, including Nurseryman's Exchange.
This is going to take a while.
Okay, your substitute planning director. We noted that there are some plan developments within the land use plan that don't require a specific plan, but Surf Beach, Dunes Beach, it does. So our analysis was that in approving the planned, the Stolotsky-Gonzalez subdivision, the city acknowledged that this was a unique area, that and that it could be planned separately from Surf Beach, but at the same time, the land use plan itself was never amended to reflect this approach. And so what staff is proposing is that we now take the next step to amend the land use plan to sever the approved Stolotsky-Gonzalez subdivision from the Surf Beach, Dune Beach planned development district. And in doing so, provide the general land use plan policies that reflect the planned unit development plan policies that were already approved by the city. And so this is conforming, this proposed amendment would acknowledge the entitlements that were already given, that the subdivision was a lawful subdivision, that there is a planned unit development plan that governs development on this site and establishes development standards, but that it is its own separate plan development designation, and therefore development can move forward without having to plan the remainder of Surf Dunes, Surf Beach subdivision, because the city has already developed has already approved planning standards for this subdivision, and indeed the infrastructure has already been almost entirely complete as far as the roads going in. That access is established. And so this slide just goes through kind of what the proposed amendment would do. Again, the intent is to reflect that this subdivision is its own plan development, has been planned. We would have the boundaries match the subdivision boundaries. It would say that a planned unit development plan has already been created and must be maintained, and would reflect that any amendments to that plan would need to be consistent with minimum policies that would be reflected in the amendments to the land use plan. And so some of those key points are shown up here. Access would need to continue to be maintained via Pullman and Champs-Élysées. Again, those roads have already been constructed. 4 single-family homes, no more development than that. And then reflect the development standards that were approved already in the planned unit development plan. So again, our recommendation here is to is to approve this as a path forward for these homes to allow the city to make consistency findings that the new homes would be consistent with the land use plan as amended. And so we are proposing to expeditiously pursue this amendment. And our recommendation is to direct staff to draft an amendment to the local coastal land use plan to establish the Stolotsky-Gonzalez plan development designation, including narrative policies and associated amendments to make the land use plan consistent throughout. And we're happy to answer any questions. I believe Jill can speak.
Well, I have to say, I literally couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, we have questions for staff.
I just have one question, which is to clarify that we are actually not making any decisions about the content of the draft amendment. Let the record show that the Community Development Director is nodding yes. And so we're going to have an opportunity to look at the policies that would be applicable. We're not laying those down in stone today. And so there's a chance for us to understand our consistency, you know, with respect to our Coastal Act obligations. And the process from here, as I understand it, is that this recommendation goes to the, well, I guess I could frame it as a question. Does this come back to us for recommendations to the City Council, or does the City Council say, yes, staff, please go prepare it, and then it comes back to us? What's the ping pong game between us and the City Council and the Coastal Commission? In as few words as possible.
You get it back, and then it goes to council, and then Coastal Commission.
So if we make a recommendation for the staff to draft an ordinance, is that saying that we're kind of agreeing with the concept?
You're agreeing with the approach, and when we bring it to you, you're not pre-committed to approve it. You can direct us to make changes or go in another way.
So just to make some things clear over here, the Dunes Beach, Venice Beach property outside of the Gonzalez-Tolosky property is not up for consideration at this point as far as anything being done on that property. Am I correct in that? We're sort of putting a fence around the property with the exception of that triangle, and we're not saying anything about what can happen on the property, when it can happen, and who can make it happen. Is that correct?
That's correct. What we will have to make very minor text amendments to that PD to make it consistent with the Stolotsky-Gonzalez PD, because we need to amend the boundary.
Okay.
And, you know, just very, that's it. We're not going to touch policies or anything like that.
So also from a legal standpoint, the fact that the Tolosky-Gonzalez property has been platted and it's been approved and built, what options do we have when that comes back to us, if any?
I want to make sure I understand your question. What options do you have when the amendment comes to you?
Well, so,
Oh, the subdivision?
okay, yeah.
Oh,
give
the
us a-
subdivision's approved, so we're
It's
not.
approved,
It's
so-
approved.
So
Yep.
we have, I guess, whatever else we can do, but the subdivision itself would be approved, assuming everything else goes forward as we have planned, right?
Yes.
All right. Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, does the applicant want to speak?
It's really, the city's the applicant here, so any, clearly we have interested parties here,
All right,
and that they would need to turn in
so
speaker
that
cards.
said, I will open public comments, and I will allow, I guess, first the owner slash former applicant of this project speak, and then we have some cards here. So if there isn't such a person, please state your name and
Mark Stolowski, 2660 North Cabrillo Highway, Half Moon Bay. This is my project with Mr. Gonzalez. Most of you know we've started this quite a while ago. We run into this little hiccup here. Our team has been working with the city trying to get this squared away, and that's our goal, is to work with the city and comply to everything. We're not trying to do something that's not right. We've worked very hard on this project for 8 or 9 years or whatever it's been, and we're going to continue to work with the city to get everything done the right way.
thank you. Okay, Carrie.
Thank you. Carrie Burke for Scholastic Gonzalez. And it's been a very busy 2 weeks for staff and for our team. And we really appreciate all the work that staff has done to provide more clarity on this unique situation and to find an equitable solution. And so I know that they've been doing a lot of research. We have a lot of background also in our meetings. We've also provided them with some of that background that they weren't privy to. Hopefully this amendment solution can be processed quickly so that it will not unduly impede the approvals since they are all consistent with the conditions, and hopefully the houses can move forward shortly. And I do believe that it was the intent of the previous actions by the Planning Commission and staff to process this correctly, and there were some semantics and some more looking more closely at the policies since you're considering the general plan, but we hope we can move forward quickly. I also do have a few clarifications to the record. This subdivision was appealed by one neighbor to the Coastal Commission, and they did notice a public hearing, and they have a two-pronged process, which is first they have to find substantial issue, and then they actually will have a de novo hearing. But that didn't occur. They did not find substantial issue, and so that was consistent with their procedures. Also, the culvert, which was originally considered to improve the flooding conditions, that was removed from this project prior to any Coastal Commission hearing, and that was really due to our we had meetings with the Army Corps of Engineers and with state parks, and they want it basically left untouched, and so that's what we complied with. And so we really hope that you understand our position with a recorded, approved residential subdivision. We trust that there can be a quick resolution on this matter, and that will provide fairness and the use of the property in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So let me read names. I have Mike Farrar, if you'd like to speak on this, followed by Jane Gorman.
Good evening, Chair DeMond, Commissioners. The need for a specific plan didn't just fall out of the cart. I mean, it's always been there. Okay, it was written into the LCP in the certified plan of 1996. So if anything's going to come out of this, it's that the requirement for specific plans is a serious requirement, and it needs to be addressed first and not last. That said, I do think that what we have before us tonight is what Senator McCain might have called a return to regular order. In other words, we're going to clean up the process. And so I support the concept that you're going to do an amendment that will remove this property from the Surf Beach PUD and leave intact the requirement for a specific plan in the Surf Beach PUD. I imagine that in this process there may be details that will come up, hopefully none of them fatal, because it is important. I witnessed the Coastal Commission hearing. I was there. It was the most disgraceful hearing I've ever seen at the Coastal Commission. I've downloaded the video for anyone that wants to watch it. But I'm expecting that this amendment will be handled better than the way they handled the project the first time. Thank you.
We have Jane Gorman, followed by Lynn Neff.
Thank you. My issue is very narrow and won't take very long. I want to express my husband, Mark Gradstein, and my opposition only to a limited issue on this development of the westernmost portion of the parcel of land which abuts our property at 2805 Naples Avenue as presented, because it's in direct, we believe, in direct violation of the settlement agreement we reached with Mr. Solotsky and with the city and Mr. Gonzalez and the city of Half Moon Bay in December of 2014, that this area will be left, and I'm quoting from the agreement, in its existing and currently undeveloped state, close quote, and no development will be undertaken in this area for a period of 10 years or until the end of 2024. Now, this is only the little triangle that starts at our property and ends nearest the beach. It doesn't affect the house. It doesn't affect the garage. It doesn't affect any of the building. We wrote a letter in opposition for this meeting 2 weeks ago, and we apologize. We were in Wyoming on a pre-planned vacation, calling the Planning Commission's attention to our settlement agreement, which precludes the split rail fence, the walkway of decomposed granite over base rock, and the planting of the portion of that lot which abuts our property. But then the staff report dated today, as best I could tell, and I've read it twice, doesn't reference any changes being made to the proposal to bring it in compliance with our agreement. Maintaining the natural habitat in the area south of our property is vital to the many species of wildlife we observe and enjoy there daily, while developing the triangle of land would, we believe, lead to the increased risk of flooding both our property, the street of Naples Avenue, and ours and our neighbors' homes. During rainy season, this area is from time to time knee-deep in water. We've called it for the last 15 years probably Lake Stolotsky during the rainy season of the year. Taking away the natural ground cover will only increase the likelihood of these problems. We therefore ask that the city honor its settlement agreement with us, which continues to be failed to be mentioned, which we reached in consideration for dismissing our lawsuit with the Superior Court of San Mateo against the city and Stolotsky and Gonzalez, and deny the plans for the parcel as written. If it were amended to be consistent with our agreement, we would not oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Neff, followed by Karen Perry.
I'm Lynn Neff. I live in Frenchman's Creek. It seems to me this land should stay as it is. And there is a plan for that the city of Half Moon Bay has developed for this property, a coastal commission, and to violate that plan and change it in any way, I think is absolutely wrong. You've got to ask the question of, earlier than this meeting, we're talking about the character of Half Moon Bay. and applauding open spaces for what it's doing, and to look at this parcel and look at these houses as the first step of developing this entire property is an abomination and against the character of Half Moon Bay and what we want for our city. And if these people that are building these houses are in no way connected to this property and what they want to do to that property, that's one thing, but I understand that's not the case. And you need to look at yourselves in the mirror and ask yourself what you're about to do. It's totally wrong.
We have Karen Perry. Decorum, please. Followed by Carrie Burke, and last one is Amber Stowe.
Hi, just a quick observation, not regarding legalese. When you come down Highway 92, there's a sign that alludes to something about welcome to Half Moon Bay, beautiful coastal city, whatever. You know, on next door, there's been a lot of banter lately and some disparaging remarks being made about Pacifica because they replaced the Denny's with this hideous, what will be a Panda Express, and they're saying how unattractive it is. But then I was thinking of Pacifica, our neighbor, you know, the 3-bedroom, 1-bath Dolger house place. When I go through Pacifica, I recognize that as a coastal city. You can't help it. You get off Highway 280 and you come down 1 and you see the beautiful ocean. You come all the way down, there's Lindemar. You can see the beautiful ocean. You come out through the Lantos Tunnel and you can see the beautiful ocean. Then you get to Half Moon Bay, our beautiful coastal city, and what do you see? Let's see. We see a big hotel, we see Sam's, we see a small little area of Surfers Beach. And then there's that little parcel here, Surf Beach, Dunes Beach, from Highway 1, where you actually realize, hey, we're on the coast. We actually are on the coast, because you wouldn't realize that you're on the coast. You would just think you're surrounded by 2-story Taco Bells everywhere. So how can we call ourselves a coastal city? You know, it just seems that it's a coastal city for the wealthy people who can afford homes at the coast, or the land developers that can build at the coast. But the rest of us, we don't get to see the coast. We just get to enjoy the traffic. Sometimes I can look over my house. It's the house there with the pool in Frenchman's Creek. And I can step on top of my fence, the one that has the big sign opposing this ridiculous build, and I can actually see a little bit of coast through that beautiful grove of trees. And I think it's sickening that you would entertain the idea of taking that away. We're not a coastal city. We're a city of pumpkins and Christmas trees. We can't call ourselves a coastal city if we approve things like this. Thank you.
Amber Stowe.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? All right, great. So I just wanted to ask for everyone who is here who is opposed to Agenda Item 1C, please stand up.
You're out of order.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. This is despite this being added what feels to the agenda at the last minute. It feels like an effort to change the land use plan, and for what? There's no change to that particular wedge in the land use plan that exists. All it is just separating it. I think it's very ironic that this is wedge-shaped, because this is just a foot in the door to change 9.3 or go against the precedent set by 9.3.3 and find a way to have the rest of the development go through. What the gentleman who had said earlier about this being, you know, it's not brought up who is the person who's the third party who is part of this particular development section. This is The logical leap that we need to take from seeing this up here, seeing that little wedge taken out of this, is that this is just a slippery slope to change it further, and then what we're eventually going to have go in is that giant development that all of us oppose. Half Moon Bay cannot take the traffic changes that will result from the next phase of what's going to happen in the rest of that red boundary. We just can't. We have no way to handle the traffic that'll be coming through once that happens. This particular hearing, this isn't just about that little wedge. It has to do with everything that's going to be in that square. I understand that it says in the conclusion that it is just about that particular portion, but anyone could take the logical leap to understand that that is not the case. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more green cards, so if anybody else wants to speak, speak now or forever hold your peace, I guess. Anybody else want to speak? All right, I will close public comment. Bring it back to the commissioners for comment, recommendations.
So, so first of all, thanks to the applicant for coming and for the public for expressing the viewpoints that they did tonight. I believe that in a perfect world, back in 2010, when this development received planning commission and then city council approval, would have been an excellent time for the concerns you have expressed tonight, some of the audience and speakers, to have been potentially influenced the city council. And we find ourselves in a really difficult position with an applicant that has an approved final map. And it strikes me that our options are rather limited. We can say no and see what happens. We can say yes and see what happens. Or we can try to find a way to address some way to align the status quo with our current local coastal program. I believe that is what our staff has brought to us as a recommendation. To be candid, it's not the way I would have liked to have seen the whole process unfold, but no one can turn the clock back 8 years, 9 years, and change what we have. So I do want to address one particular point, and I will verify with staff. I believe that the concerns about an agreement between the applicant and the neighbor to the west, sorry, to the north, but at the western end of the subdivision, and the city it is not being ignored, as I understand it, because it's not part of the question that's in front of the planning commission tonight. So maybe to frame that as a different, rather than a statement, as a question, is there an opportunity in the future for us to address the concerns that would make the development of this subdivision consistent with the agreement to which the city is a party? Do we have another speaker?
Yes, there's opportunity that we will address that. It is not part of the scope of tonight. It is not being ignored. We know the terms of the settlement agreement, and we understand how to apply them in implementation, but we're not at that level tonight, and that's why you're not seeing it. You will get that back.
Okay, thank you.
Have Commissioner Hernandez or Holt weighed in on this at all?
Okay, so bring it back. I think the report that we received from staff kind of outlined what our options were, and one of them would be to just say no, but there are ramifications to that. As I said at the outset, this is a legally platted area, and their process that it was done back in, or that began in 2010 was deficient, because turns out that it's part of the Surfers Beach Dunes PD district. But that said, it's legal. We can't turn back the clock. The question is, what is the least amount of damage we can do at this point in time, as far as ensuring that all the legal issues are met. And I think the staff, in my mind, has kind of laid out the best option, at least at this point in time, and that is trying to draft a amendment or LCP that remediates just this issue. And therefore, if there were something in the future that had to do with Surfers Beach, Surf Beach, or the Venice Beach, then that would be on a standalone basis going forward. So we're not talking about that. We're just focusing on the Slosky-Gonzalez subdivision. So I think, in terms of what the proposal is, that we direct staff to work out whatever language is appropriate, bring it back to us, and we'll have another opportunity to see what it says. So that's, I'm in agreement with at least the process going forward.
Can I ask, I feel like I just need to ask one more time, because we have such a small group here tonight of our planning commissioners, and I'm uncomfortable not getting much of their feedback. As I understand it, there's not many options. One option is magically the public would somehow come together and buy all this land and make it fair for the applicant that's already has the subdivision approved. Another option is to kind of put it into the realm of bickering back and forth with attorneys and lawsuits and all that kind of thing. Or the option that you've laid out here, which is amending the plan, and if we ask you to prepare that draft, I guess there are some options when it comes back to us to say, well, we didn't really think that was the right thing we wanted you to do, and we're sorry, and spent a bunch of our money. And do I have it right? I mean, I'm just trying to, it's a very uncomfortable position that we're in here. And
Can I answer some of your questions through the chair?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, I'm obviously not feeling very well, so I apologize for not having a more thoughtful answer when you asked about Chair Hernandez and Vice Chair Holt, because 2 weeks ago when you continued those items, both of your fellow commissioners, they were both discussing their concerns about the policy conflict that was at hand, and their concern about setting a precedent that was potentially a risk, setting the city up for risk for other PUDs, because we have a PUD here where a piece of it was considered absent the entire specific plan area, and that's a precedent we do not want to do again. This is a protective measure against doing that going forward. This is a conservative approach, and I know that it is it takes a little while to get through the policies and consider the map and really think it through in terms of how that is working to take very great care of all the existing PDs in the city, including Surf Beach and Dunes Beach, and to really make that statement about the specific plan and not being able to cleave it apart. This has already been done with an entitlement, and we're really trying to tie loose ends that were not addressed, and we believe that our predecessor staff they were doing their best, and unfortunately we couldn't pull the whole thing together, and so it's very important to iron this smooth. Now, in terms of your concern about the time that it will take, this is not a hard piece of work for us to prepare this amendment. This is a small land area. It's well understood because it was already really well studied, and this is something that we can do very, very quickly. So our intent is to resolve this quickly as well, because that reduces the city's vulnerability. Thank you.
Through the chair. So I want to be sure that my perspective on this is clear. I did hear members of the public express a concern that this would be a slippery slope, that we would see more items removed from the PD time and time again, that this is a model. I can't speak for future planning commissions and future city councils, but I will say that I do not see it that way. I feel like this is the best chance that we have to reaffirm that the planning of planned unit areas going forward is not piecemeal, that when a proposal to come forward for a project for a portion of this planned development district that did not include an approved certified specific plan, that you, the members of the public, will have the opportunity to respond in a way that didn't happen in 2010, and that your planning commission and your city council may take a different approach. And that's the reason, and I'll go one step further and say, when this project took place, when it was approved in 2010, I wasn't on the planning commission, but I wrote a letter to the Coastal Commission expressing my concern about the lack of a specific plan. That's not the question in front of us tonight. That's water under the bridge. We can't change that. And it's a difficult errand to try to do that. What we can do is try to minimize the risk of additional piecemeal development. And it's my opinion that the staff recommendation is the best way to do that. I don't see a better way. I didn't hear a better way tonight. And I appreciate the comments of the applicant. It sounds like they have sensitivity to the concerns of their neighbors to the north. There'll be an opportunity to clarify that when the projects come forward. I certainly will be watching to understand that, and I know staff will be paying attention to the extent to which any future development of this area conforms to whatever agreements the city is a party to. And with that said, if you're ready for a motion, I'm glad to approve move the resolution next in order.
Let me just say one more thing for the public. From a timing standpoint, I gather sometime in the very near future we will receive something from you that is an attempt to remedy this, and the public will have an opportunity to come back and talk to that. Am I correct in that? So
you are correct. You will see this at a noticed public hearing, and we will announce it in the city's e-news and post on Nextdoor, so everybody will know.
Thank you. I am ready for a recommendation.
I move the resolution next in order.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Now you're not going to get a roll call vote?
Roll call vote, please.
Yes. Commissioner Benjamin?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
And Commissioner DeBon?
Yes.
Excellent.
So the next item on the agenda is the director's report, if you're ready for it.
I am, thank you. We'll click through this quickly. Coming up to City Council on September 4th, I wanted to let you know the accessory dwelling unit ordinance is going to have a second introduction. We needed to make a couple changes to it since the July meeting. So it will be, we hope council will reintroduce it on September 4th, and from there we will move on with the second reading, and we'll report back to you on its progress as it moves forward. Also, before the City Council on September 4th, they'll be considering components that could go into a housing work plan. And there's a number of things that have come through the City Council's priority setting and the July 15th community conversation about housing that we held, where we had 90 folks come and give us a lot of input. And so what will probably come from that are a handful of near-term things that they would like us to work on in the housing work plan. Most of them will be Planning Commission purview, so we'll report out to you as that moves forward. Agenda forecast for the Planning Commission, I'm going to do it in reverse order a little bit here because it's in the same topic. At your October 23rd session, we're going to have a break for you and invite you to the Ted Adcock Community Center to participate, observe, enjoy the second community conversation about housing. And we're doing that with you because we're going to focus on diverse types of housing, some interesting ideas that came out of the first go-round, and frankly that have come out of the LCP input phase of work that we've been doing and are relevant to the development policies that we're working on. So there's a definite connection to your work, and we think it's also just a great opportunity to hear the community have these conversations. They will be facilitated. We will have English, Spanish, and bilingual tables. Okay, now let's go back to the way we usually do this. September 11th, your next meeting, you'll have a use permit, and for the Odyssey, they need to renew their permit, and that's on Main Street. It's that outdoor use. Yeah, it's 5 years already. Does that not feel right? Yeah. Okay, so you get to see them again. And the Highway 1 South intersection project that you approved a coastal development for last fall, we're going to bring some gateway designs to you, landscaping and signage. That will be part of the implementation of that infrastructure. And I don't want to go past that. We've got a lot of things simmering, and as soon as they firm up, we'll let you know. I'm hearing a temporary event permit for Carter Park on September 5th because the city's going to have a large end of summer outdoor concert on September 22nd, and we have to issue a coastal development permit to ourselves and implement, in particular for Carter Park, appropriate biological resource protection measures because of the sensitivity of the creek there. And addition to a single family home at St. John Avenue on September 19th will be a director's item. Before you, on the table tonight, we need to report out when we issue emergency coastal development permits. We issued one last week for Rocket Farms. They needed to demolish a greenhouse. It was unsafe. I saw it, the staff planner saw it, our building inspector saw it. We were all in agreement that we weren't going to go in there. So that was coordinated. We made sure to have a good communication with our Coastal Commission staff colleagues. They have been informed of this. We have 3 days to let them know when these are done. In this case, there's always a follow-up, typically, coastal development permit from an emergency permit. In this case, that's already happened. This applicant has already applied to replace this greenhouse. It's just the greenhouse gave out before we could get all the way through processing the applications. So all the ducks are just sort of in the reverse order, but they're all there. So we'll keep moving there, and you will see that in the future. And I'm supposed to be reporting when we approve signs to you, and I haven't been, and we just had a couple. We did one on 524 Main Street, and another one, a wall sign at Strawflower Village for a new tenant called the Taste Cafe. So we'll get into a better routine with those. We don't get a lot of sign permits, so you're not going to hear a lot of them. And I think that brings us up to order with what we were supposed to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Planning Commission communications.
Yes, through the chair, I'm going to be in Florida for a visit with my dad during our next Planning Commission meeting. I'm happy to participate by phone. I just need to know if that's necessary for a quorum, and I wanted to be sure we were on record that I was available, but we have time for noticing now. And if we run late, I apologize to you and the public if we run short. Thank you.
Any others? Then I call for a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't
Aye.
need- don't need a